There's a man every woman fears, but not because he's violent, cruel, or loud. She fears him because she cannot enter his inner world. You've met this man before, or at least you've felt his presence. He's the one who doesn't chase, who doesn't explain himself, who doesn't bend to win approval. In Jungian terms, he's not possessed by the anima, the inner feminine that makes most men weak, emotional, and reactive. Instead, he has integrated her. He understands his own darkness, and that makes him untouchable. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is where most men fall. They think they're free, but they're driven by hidden emotional programs, need for validation, fear of rejection, and the urge to please women. They mistake attention for love and comfort for connection. Women sense this weakness immediately. They can smell emotional dependency the same way a wolf smells fear. But when a man begins to integrate his shadow, when he confronts the chaos within himself, he changes everything. He becomes unpredictable, not because he's erratic, but because he's centered. A woman can't manipulate a man who has already made peace with his pain. She can't control a man who no longer needs her approval to feel whole, and that terrifies her. You must understand, women are drawn to strength, not safety, to presence, not promises. They're magnetized by mystery, not familiarity. When Jung talked about individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, he was describing the death of the controlled man and the birth of the sovereign one. So the question isn't, how do you control women? It's, how do you become the man they can't control? The man who can love deeply without becoming weak, who can walk away without bitterness, who can feel without collapsing. This man doesn't play the game, he is the game. And every woman who meets him feels it. The silent fear of losing power. The realization that here stands someone who doesn't orbit around her. This video is your initiation into that transformation. Jung's ideas aren't just about psychology, they're about power. The power that comes when you stop living as a reflection of female validation and start becoming an expression of your own inner order. Because once you understand the depths of your own psyche, no woman, not even the most seductive, manipulative, or emotionally intelligent, can control you. She may love you, desire you, even try to possess you, but deep down she'll know she's met the kind of man she can't command. The controlled man, how the anima owns you. You've been told to be kind, to be nice, to be understanding. Society programmed you to believe that emotional availability is the highest virtue. But Carl Jung saw through that illusion. He observed that when a man doesn't confront his inner feminine, the anima, he becomes her slave. She whispers in his mind, disguising herself as his empathy, his love, his desire to please. But beneath it, she's the force that makes him beg for validation, chase approval, and lose himself in a woman's moods. The average man is not in control of his emotions are in control of him. He reacts, explains, apologizes, and overinvests. He's terrified of disapproval. And when he meets a strong or emotionally complex woman, he becomes confused, shrinking into submission without realizing it. Jung would say he's been possessed by the anima, meaning he's lost his masculine center. You've probably felt this possession before. That obsessive need to text her back, that pit in your stomach when she doesn't reply, that emotional storm when she pulls away. That's not love, it's psychological dependency. You've projected your inner feminine onto her. She becomes the carrier of your anima, and now she holds your emotional leash. But women don't respect that energy. They crave polarity. A man who is too emotionally open, too accessible, too eager to please, loses his edge. He becomes predictable, controllable. His energy becomes heavy, needy, and suffocating. She'll test him, unconsciously, to see if he can hold his own center. And each time he fails, each time he explains himself, defends himself, or reacts emotionally, her attraction dies a little more. This is the tragedy of the modern man. He confuses emotional honesty with emotional exposure. Jung understood that integration doesn't mean becoming soft, it means becoming aware. A man who integrates his anima doesn't suppress emotion. He channels it. He feels deeply but doesn't identify with every feeling. He allows pain to sharpen him, not enslave him. A woman can't control a man like that because he's not seeking her emotional permission to exist. He doesn't use her as a mirror for his worth. He's connected to something deeper, his self, what Jung called the organizing principle of the psyche. When you serve that center, you become untouchable. You move through relationships with calm power. You listen but don't absorb manipulation. You love but don't lose yourself. The shadow integration, power through inner darkness. The man women can't control is not pure light, he's light and darkness in balance. Jung called this the integration of the shadow. The shadow is everything you repress. Your aggression, your lust, your pride, your selfishness, your will to dominate. Society teaches you to bury these instincts. To be nice, to avoid conflict, to stay agreeable. But the more you deny your shadow, the more it controls you from behind the curtain. Women unconsciously sense whether a man has faced his darkness. A man who hasn't will appear safe but dull, easily influenced, emotionally predictable, spiritually castrated. A man who has faced it carries a magnetic tension. He's not dangerous, but he could be. He's calm, not because he's weak, but because he's mastered his chaos. That's why women fear him. He doesn't flinch in the face of their emotional storms. When you suppress your aggression, it leaks out as passive behavior. When you deny your lust, it becomes shame. When you ignore your ambition, it transforms into resentment. Jung warned that the shadow, when unacknowledged, turns men into hypocrites, externally kind, internally conflicted. And nothing is easier for a woman to control than a conflicted man. But when you integrate your shadow, everything changes. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, even breathe differently. You're no longer performing goodness, you are whole. You no longer fear rejection because you've already accepted the worst in yourself. You've seen your own capacity for manipulation, for desire, for anger, and you've owned it. That ownership is freedom. Women feel this in your energy. You become unpredictable, not because you're unstable, but because you're ungovernable. You don't respond the way most men do. You don't try to fix her emotions or justify yours. You observe, you stay grounded, you hold the frame. This is power, not the loud, external kind, but the silent, psychological kind that makes her wonder who you really are. Jung believed that true masculinity is not about dominance, but integration. A man who represses his darkness becomes a slave to it, but a man who befriends it becomes unshakable. The shadow gives you edge. It gives you magnetism. It gives you the quiet authority that makes a woman respect you even when she doesn't understand you. The self-contained man, freedom from emotional dependency. You've probably noticed that most men don't really live their own lives. They orbit around women's moods, their approval, their affection. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it runs deep. Jung would say these men are still unconsciously possessed by the anima, living through the emotional energy of women, mistaking her responses for their own value. But the man women fear cannot be possessed. He's self-contained. His emotions circulate within him like a closed system. He feels desire but isn't consumed by it. He can love a woman deeply, yet never become her psychological property. His sense of self doesn't expand or shrink based on her attention. That's what makes him so dangerous to her ego. She can't manipulate what she doesn't own. You see, when you become emotionally self-sufficient, you break the oldest form of control there is, the control of emotional validation. Most women don't control through logic. They control through emotion. They test, withdraw, provoke, and mirror your insecurities. When you react, they know exactly where your weaknesses are. But when you remain centered, when your calm is unbroken, you reflect their emotions back to them. You become a psychological mirror they can't distort. Jung's idea of individuation is precisely this: the process of separating your identity from collective expectations and unconscious projections. It means you no longer rely on the outer world to define you. Your validation comes from the alignment between your conscious and unconscious mind. When you reach that level, your aura changes. You stop being reactive and start being magnetic. A self-contained man doesn't chase women because he doesn't chase emotions. He doesn't pursue to fill a void. He already is full. Women feel this fullness like gravity. It's the silent presence that makes them nervous. The kind of energy that says, I don't need you, but I could choose you. That's where attraction becomes reverence. Most men try to win a woman by showing affection, loyalty, or devotion, but they don't realize that these gestures often come from inner emptiness. A woman senses the difference between love given from abundance and love offered from need. The first is powerful. The second is pathetic. The man she fears gives from overflow, not from hunger. The archetype of the king, command without domination. In Jungian psychology, every man carries within him the potential to embody archetypes, universal patterns of masculine energy that shape how he moves through life. The warrior, the magician, the lover, and the king. Among them, the king is the one women both crave and fear the most. Because the king doesn't seek approval, he grants it. You are not born a king. You become one by mastering your inner world. The king archetype is not about ruling others. It's about ruling yourself. Jung saw the king as the axis of order, the center that holds chaos in balance. Most men try to control women externally because they lack internal structure. They try to dominate when they should embody. But control that comes from insecurity always collapses. The true king doesn't react to provocation. He doesn't compete for attention or validation. His presence alone commands respect because he radiates internal harmony. When you walk into a room with that energy, you don't need to prove anything. People feel the weight of your self-awareness. Women fear this type of man because he doesn't get pulled into their emotional orbit. He listens but doesn't absorb. He observes but doesn't over-identify. When she cries, he doesn't panic. When she withdraws, he doesn't chase. When she tests, he remains still. That stillness isn't cold, it's authority. It's the same energy Jung described when he talked about the self. The central organizing force of the psyche that keeps all opposites in balance. The king energy doesn't need to explain itself. It simply is. It represents psychological sovereignty, the state where no external force, including a woman's affection or disapproval, can disturb your inner peace. And ironically, that peace is what makes women crave you. Because in a world full of emotionally chaotic men, a calm man becomes irresistible, but there's a cost. When you step into the king energy, you stop being liked by everyone. Weak men will envy you. Emotionally unstable women will try to provoke you. They'll call you detached, arrogant, or emotionless. That's because your presence threatens their unconscious need for control. You expose their chaos simply by not being affected by it. Being a king doesn't mean you dominate others. It means you order your kingdom. You set standards for how you live, love, and lead. You decide who enters your emotional space. You are generous with your energy but ruthless with your boundaries. Jung would call this individuation matured, the point where the self no longer needs outer validation. The woman's unconscious, why she fears the free man. You might think women consciously want to control men, but that's not entirely true. Much of what drives female behavior happens in the unconscious. The same realm Jung spent his life exploring. Women don't consciously seek dominance. They seek emotional security. But when they meet a man who is free, their unconscious feels both drawn to and threatened by him. Jung's theory of projection explains this perfectly. Every woman carries her own Animus, the inner masculine, energy that defines her relationship with men. When she meets a man, she projects her Animus onto him, seeing not who he really is, but who her psyche needs him to be. If you are weak, she'll feel contempt. If you're overbearing, she'll feel resistance. But if you're free, balanced, self-contained, and grounded, her psyche doesn't know how to categorize you. You don't fit her pattern, and that disorients her. At first, she'll feel intense attraction. Freedom is intoxicating. Your calmness makes her feel safe. Your independence makes her feel alive. But then the fear sets in, because your freedom reminds her of her lack of control, not just over you, but over herself. You mirror her inner chaos, and instead of facing it, she may try to pull you into it. She'll test your patience, challenge your boundaries, question your intentions. She's not doing this to hurt you. She's doing it because her unconscious is trying to re-establish emotional equilibrium. When you remain unshaken, something profound happens. She begins to confront her own inner conflict. Your stability forces her to meet her shadow, the part of her that fears abandonment, that craves control, that seeks validation through manipulation. Most men can't withstand this stage. They collapse emotionally or retaliate with anger. But you, if you hold your ground, you become the mirror that helps her evolve. This is why Jung said that relationships are psychological crucibles. They burn away illusions. When you meet a woman's fear with grounded awareness instead of reaction, you guide her unconsciously toward her own integration. You stop being her emotional subject and become her psychological equal. Women fear the free man because he represents something they can't possess. Autonomy. His love is a gift, not a transaction. His presence is chosen, not coerced. He exposes the truth that love cannot be controlled. It can only be respected. The detachment of the master. Power in emotional distance. When Jung spoke of mastery, he didn't mean dominance over others. He meant mastery over the self, over the emotional storms that make most men slaves to the moment. To become the man women fear but can't control, You must learn detachment, not coldness but clarity. Detachment isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of understanding. It means that even when emotions rise like waves, your center remains still. Women test men precisely to find this point. They want to know, can he hold the storm? Can he contain my chaos without drowning in it? Most men fail this test because they confuse reaction with connection. They think that by showing more emotion, they're proving love. But in truth, they're proving instability. You've probably experienced this yourself. Moments where she pulls away, grows distant, or becomes unpredictable. Your instinct is to chase, to talk, to fix. That's your anima, the unconscious feminine energy, taking control, pushing you to seek validation through emotional fusion. Jung warned that this impulse enslaves men. The more you chase, the more power you surrender. The detached man does the opposite. He steps back into observation. He watches his emotions without letting them define his identity. He doesn't suppress or numb. He simply doesn't feed the chaos. This makes him powerful in a way words can't describe. Because once you master emotional distance, you control the one thing women use to control men: emotional urgency. You begin to notice the patterns, how she creates tension just to feel connection, how she withdraws to provoke pursuit, how she mirrors your insecurity to reassert control. But instead of reacting, you simply see. And seeing is power. Jung said that what you make conscious loses its power to control you. When you bring awareness into the emotional battlefield, you become immune to manipulation. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It's not the absence of love. It's the elevation of love. You still desire her, still enjoy connection, but you do so from sovereignty. You can walk away without resentment, stay without anxiety, and love without losing yourself. That equilibrium terrifies her because it's rare. Most men oscillate between obsession and apathy. You live in balance. The magnetic calm, the final transformation. There's a strange paradox in this journey. The more you detach, the more magnetic you become. Jung would call this the emergence of the self, the integrated totality of who you are. When you stop chasing, the world starts orbiting around you. When you stop proving, others start paying attention. When you stop reacting, you start influencing. The man women can't control is not the loudest or the most dominant. He's the calmest. Because calmness is the final form of power. It's the signal that you've transcended the need to be validated or understood. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. Your calmness will make people uncomfortable, especially women who are used to emotional leverage. They'll test it. They'll try to awaken the reactive boy within you to see if he still exists. And when they can't, they'll experience both attraction and unease. You'll feel their energy shift, fascination mixed with frustration. That's the moment you realize you've stepped beyond the collective game. Calmness doesn't mean inaction. It means everything you do is deliberate. You speak with purpose. You move with intention. You love with choice, not with need. Jung believed that once a man integrates his anima and shadow, his actions become effortless, guided not by ego, but by essence. You stop trying to control outcomes because you've mastered the only thing that ever mattered: yourself. The calm man doesn't win through manipulation or control. He wins through presence. When you speak, your words carry weight because they come from depth. When you're silent, your energy still communicates the unspoken confidence of a man who no longer fears loss. That's the energy women crave but can't command. When Jung described individuation, he wasn't describing a spiritual fantasy. He was describing this transformation. The man who no longer seeks completion through others becomes whole within himself. And wholeness radiates like light through darkness. Women feel that light. It unsettles them because it exposes the truth. They can't create or destroy this kind of man. They can only orbit him, the man beyond control. So who is the man women fear but can't control? He's not a fantasy. He's not born from arrogance or cruelty. He's forged in the fire of self-awareness. He's the man who has faced his shadow, integrated his anima, and anchored his soul in something immovable. You become him not by playing games, but by ending them. You stop reacting. You stop chasing. You stop defining yourself through her emotions. You start studying your own, tracing them back to the childhood wounds, the insecurities, the invisible scripts that kept you dependent. And as you bring those patterns into consciousness, their control dissolves. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Most men never reach that privilege because they spend their lives seeking identity in women's eyes. But you, if you choose this path, begin to see that the greatest form of control is self-mastery. And once you master yourself, no one else can own you. You'll notice how everything changes. Women respond differently. They'll still test you, still challenge you, still try to read you, but deep down they'll respect you. Because you've become something they can feel but never manipulate. A fully realized man. You'll move through the world quietly but powerfully. You'll speak less but mean more. You'll love less frequently but more deeply. And when you leave, you'll leave peace, not chaos. Because your energy will no longer feed the emotional games of the unconscious. It will dissolve them. This is the ultimate Jungian transformation, becoming the self, whole, sovereign and beyond control. You no longer belong to the projections of others. You belong to yourself, and that's the truth every woman unconsciously recognizes when she meets you. She doesn't fear your power. She fears her inability to possess it. She doesn't want to destroy you. She wants to understand you. But she can't, because you've become the one thing no one can own, a man who knows himself. And in a world where everyone's trying to control something or someone, that's the rarest kind of power there is.